Welcome, everyone. Our Lafayette Reads Together title this year is Haben, the Deaf-Blind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law by Haben Girma. As part of our Lafayette Reads Together program, we've invited Sami Parbhoo to talk about his travels in Ethiopia and to share a little about the traditional cooking techniques and spices of that region. Haben's parents are from Ethiopia and neighboring Eritrea, and through her book we get a glimpse of the incredible culture and the difficult war-related struggles of that area. Haben shares some wonderful stories about visiting relatives in Eritrea as a child, and one I especially enjoyed was the multi-day preparation for a family wedding, where everyone, including children, are expected to help out. There was just so much about that story that brought the culture and her family to life. And of course, there's food. Haben shares stories about introducing her American friends to Ethiopian and Eritrean food, and we learn about injera and a Berberi spice mix. Lucky for us, Sami has supplied us with enough Berberi to share. We'll be handing out spice packs and a few simple recipes for you to try at home. Stop by any library branch to pick up both a copy of Haben and a spice pack. So, welcome and thank you for joining us, Sami.
Thank you.
We're eager to hear about your travels and your time in Ethiopia.
Cool. Thank you. I got to go, I was very lucky to be able to go right before COVID hit last year. It was around mid-January 2020, and I've been planning on doing this for quite a while. My wife and I lived in Washington, D.C. in an Ethiopian neighborhood, and we were very influenced by that culture. The music's amazing. If you've never heard Ethiopian music, listen to some of their stuff. It's amazing. There's a lot of the 60s and 70s jazz-influenced Ethiopian music that is phenomenal. So I would hear this incredible music as I walked down the streets, and I'd smell this amazing food. And at first I was a little intimidated to walk into a place, but not really. I'm kind of person who likes to check in on places like that. And we'd go into places, and I'd ask, what is this? What does this smell? And I remember our first time eating an Ethiopian meal. It's very different than what we're used to. You get a big plate in the middle, and no matter what you're ordering, you and your friends who come to eat, all the food is put on this big platter. And at the bottom they put the injera, which is that spongy bread. It's kind of like a sourdoughy kind of bread, almost like a pancake, I would say, because it has that sponginess to it, made out of teff, which is the grain that's over there, and it's a very healthy grain actually, and they ferment it, so it has that sourdoughy kind of flavor, and they put that at the bottom, and then they put a lot of their food on top. And most Ethiopian food is stewed style foods, so they stew them for a long time. Most farming communities will do that. That's why the French cuisine is like that. That's why Cajun cuisine is like that. It gives them time to let it slow cook while they're doing other things in the fields. So it's a slow cook kind of stews. And it's so aromatic and so flavorful. It's really, to me, it's addictive. I love the combination of that sourdoughiness with their spiciness. There must have been some interaction with Indian culture, Indian cuisine from a long time ago, because I see that influence. It reminds me a lot of like what we call Indian curries, their mixtures, their masalas. So I think there's some influences from that. But the beauty of Ethiopian food is instead of rice, you're having it over the injera. And that makes such a difference to me. It's amazing. And I love that they put the injera underneath, so there's no food wasted. So you eat, what you basically do is they'll give you a little bit of injera on the side where you tear off, and you eat by hand too. You eat, okay? And then at the end, all the flavors from all the dishes are on the injera at the bottom. And that is the dessert. That is better than everything else you've eaten. So you tend to overeat when you eat Ethiopian because it's so delicious. But then you're like, oh, I'm so full. And then you taste that injera at the bottom. And all those flavors are already involved in there. And it's so amazing. Another beautiful thing about Ethiopian culture, I saw this many a time. Even a man will do that to a friend. They will feed you as a show of love. So they will take a bite and get it ready, and then they'll feed their friends with it. And such a beautiful thing that I can't see us in our culture, especially now with COVID, of course, but even previous to that. Such a nice little touch, you know. They're very loving people as a culture. I think per capita, they're the nicest people I've ever met in a country. Beautiful people, an amazing country, really very beautiful scenically. But their soul, I think it's the soul of the people is what makes it a special place. And I went in January, so it was around the time of some religious celebrations there. The Ethiopian church is even older than Catholicism, so it's a very ancient part of the world, Christian world. And they have churches and monks who have been there since, from the beginning of Christianity, and you see that essence there. The power of their religion there affects their people, and I found it in a very beautiful, positive way. They're very spiritual, and I think it gives them a strength that keeps them going through a lot of hard times. And so, I went and was able to eat a lot of amazing food. I went to a lady's house and I learned a few more techniques. I tried to fine tune some techniques. She said my stews were very on point, but the injera is what I really wanted to learn. So making injera, you ferment for about 7-10 days the teff in some water, and then you make it like a pancake. And it's just getting the ratios right. Not too watery, not too thick, getting the pan hot enough so it doesn't stick. So I started in Addis Ababa, which is the capital, because that's where I flew into. And I got to spend a few days there and just feel it out. I love walking cities. It's one of my favorite things to do when I travel. You get to see the people, and you get to experience the smells and noises that makes that city special. And I loved it. Ethiopia is such an ancient culture. They have one foot in antiquity and one foot in the modern world, and I feel it's a beautiful balance, especially in Addis Ababa. It's a major city, and then when you leave there, there are quite a few, maybe 5 or 6 other cities, but other than that, most people live in farms and they live in small villages, so very quickly you get to experience the older way of living. And seeing people walking up mountains just by themselves with a cane is amazing, just to see their tenacity. I got to go to Lalibela, which is the sacred city of Ethiopia, and it was phenomenal, truly phenomenal, very magical. Quite a few times I got teared up just listening to their chanting and their prayers. It's beautiful, a beautiful experience that I had over there too. So Lalibela is the sacred city, and most of the churches, like St. George and all these, are are closer to the ground, closer to the town itself. I actually went up to a monastery outside of Lalibela, but that was something where you can just climb or take a cab and all that. But I did another one. I went up further to Tigray, the Tigray region, which unfortunately now is in the news for sad reasons. And there was a church on a cliff in the mountains that, first of all, you had to go with somebody, like, as a small tour. It's not going to be a big tour bus. I went with one Norwegian guy. It was just 2 of us with a driver to bring us there. It's the middle of nowhere. And I understood that we were going to be, walking up a mountain. And I was kind of a little intimidated just from that. And the reason why is Addis Ababa is about 7,500 feet above sea level, something like that. And this was about 9,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level. Somebody living at sea level in Louisiana, that's a big difference. And I would cramp up even walking in Addis Ababa. It's the lack of oxygen, and we're spoiled here. We drive a lot, so having to walk that much. So I get to this place, and I see the mountain we're supposed to go up to. I'm like, okay, let's go. At first, it starts off with some rock steps, And I'm like, every 20, 30 steps, I'm like, guys, we got to stop. I don't know if I can go. Just give me a little bit longer. And I'm thinking, I can do this. If I just keep doing these stairs and we're going to get to a point where I just have to use my hands a little bit to walk up, I'll be fine. Well, as we're walking up, it just happens that we were early enough in the morning. The priest who lives in a village at the bottom of the mountain was walking up to go to that church, which is up on a ledge. And he was like, well, y'all follow me. And so we're following him, and we get to a point where we have to rock climb. When I mean rock climb, I mean there are like some footholds and handholds where you can put your hands that you could tell were made specifically. So it's not like hardcore per se, but we're talking no ropes, straight up, and I'd say about maybe 30, 40 feet rock climbing. And I was afraid that I would get suddenly cramped up in the middle, and then what? What would I do? I wouldn't be able to go down. I wouldn't be able to go up. And this priest just looked at me and just, in Amharic, which I didn't understand, but, hand signals like, you can do it. Come on, come on. And I was like, I have to do it now. And luckily I did. But it was quite an experience, but so well worth it. You get up there and you're walking the side, like a ledge about 2-3 foot wide, and then it's just a drop off. And it's pretty arid where we were. It's like in the desert parts. So when we go in there, a lot of the paintings on the walls, the Bible itself that they had there was like, I want to say 600-700 years old, because they had it on goat hide, so it keeps. And especially with being so arid, it kept a lot longer. So it was phenomenal to see these things. One of the first places where monks who came from Egypt came to Ethiopia. So we're talking, I think 300-400 AD, something like that. So it's a very old culture there, and it's amazing. And I'm very honored to have experienced this. I feel like it has helped me as a human being in many ways. Talking about how friendly they are, just sitting at a bar, outdoor bar, drinking a beer, and this Ethiopian gentleman was like, do you mind if I sit here? There's no more tables around. I'm like, sure, of course. And before you know it, a friend of his comes, suddenly we're drinking beer together, suddenly we're drinking more, we're eating, we're laughing. Then he takes me to a club, a dance club, and it was phenomenal. You have a club, it's one of those VIP, the ones you see like in New York City or big cities, where you have people lined up outside to wait their turn to go in. Everybody's dressed beautifully, elegantly in suits, etc., modern. And all of a sudden, there's maybe 500 people in this place. Everybody's sitting, drinking, eating, talking, whatever they're doing. And a song comes on from, I think it was like from the 70s. And everybody, the bouncers, the VIPs, everybody, the young, start singing it together. And it just blew me away. I was like, this is such a beautiful thing. I love seeing when a whole culture, community can sing together. You'll see that in pubs in England or the German, ways of singing together. And I saw it, and it was such a beautiful experience. It was one of the last things I got to see before I left from Ethiopia. It's beautiful. It's a singing culture there. So, yeah, a very special experience for me. So the one thing that I was going to tie in with all this is their food. So I'm going to give us a little, very easy recipe to do so that you can experiment, whoever wants to pick up some of the berbere. So berbere is their blend that they use predominantly in most of their foods. It is a cayenne, chili, fenugreek, garlic. There's a lot of things in there. Each region, I think, does it slightly differently. Each family might say they want it slightly differently, kind of like in India. There's no one curry or masala. It's not like that. Each family has their own recipes, and I think it's like that as well there, because I tried a few different kinds while I was there, and I could tell slight differences. But you'll get the gist of it from this. Their food, like I said, is stews, usually. So the recipe I'm going to give you is for one of those stews that you would usually have like injera, which is their bread, underneath. And I will do maybe one vegan one, which is like their, it's called misirwat, which is their lentils. in a Barbary sauce, which is delicious. Even if you love meat, you would love this. And I can do like a recipe for Doro Wat, which is their national dish, which is the chicken cooked, stewed down. They're quite similar ways of cooking these. So if you see one of these, you'll be able to do both of them. They're predominantly done with a lot of onions. So one thing I learned from cooking Ethiopian food is a lot of onions. Like Cajun cuisine, we cook with onions. There are a lot of cultures that do, like Mirepoix or the Trinity. We're talking lots of onions. So we might use one whole large onion. They'll probably use 2 or 3, depending what kind of stew it is, because that is what makes their gravy. They will have that, like for the Doro Wat, which is the chicken dish, you almost want to do it in a blender. You want it almost to like not like a puree, but a thick puree. And that's what you're going to cook down. You're going to cook it down so much that it becomes a thickener, and so much flavor's there. And what you'll do is you'll cook all that down, then you add a little Burberry powder, and you cook that. It's just so flavorful. Unfortunately, you cannot get injera in this town. You can get some in New Orleans or Houston. I recommend if you ever go there to pick some up, so that way you can really learn how to do this. I think once you experience it, you'll want to do it more than one time. You're going to hopefully be addicted as I am to it. It's so amazing. But even if you don't, for example, I have eaten it with pasta, and it is delicious with pasta. So there is a little bit of the Italian influence, because the Italians tried to colonize Ethiopia, but they failed. they kept them out. And so there's that influence of pasta there, and I had it with pasta as just a dish, and it's so delicious. So it works. If you can't have injera, I think it works better with pasta than rice. So if you're looking for a carb to eat it with, I would recommend that. But of course, feel free to eat what you like. I mean, if you're gluten-free, you might want to stick with the rice. Injera is, if it's made correctly, if it's true injera, like made just with teff, that is also gluten-free, just so you know. So if you ever go to somewhere like a restaurant, you should ask them, and you'll be able to tell, because it'll be a darker injera. Some places, they make their injera mixed with some whole wheat or wheat, and just it's cheaper, and most people will not like how bitter the real injera can be, so they Americanize it, but that will have gluten then, so you have to be careful with that. So I would definitely ask, and they will tell you honestly if it has or not. So when it's served, you will be serving the stews, either the misarwat, the lentils, or the chicken, or both. Like if you're going to a restaurant, they will give you a little bit of the chicken, maybe a little bit of a beef stew, 2 different kinds of lentils, and then they'll have collard greens, which is so delicious, again, with all this. So that one you get for texture. Then they'll have cabbage and carrots that are cooked in a little bit of turmeric, and just has a little bit of crunch still, but not too much, kind of cooked down a little bit. You have those kind of things, some fresh tomatoes and jalapeno peppers, and the combination of textures and flavors all together make it phenomenal. That's another thing that I find very similar to Indian cuisine. But what they do here is there's a ghee called nitar kibbe, which is like it's ghee that they warm up to where it's melted already, and then they put spices in it, so it becomes a spiced ghee. And you put that at the end, or you can saute with it at the beginning of your dish, and it enhances food. Now, that's a little bit harder to get. You have to, or you can make, again, if you want to, you can make it and you can have it in your fridge. It won't go bad. And you can add a little bit whenever you're sauteing anything you'd like to add that aromatics that come through. It's a delicious cuisine. Truly my favorite. When we were living in D.C., our daughter was around 2 years old, 2.5. And every week we'll be like, all right, we're going out to eat on a Friday. That was our day to go out to eat. And we tried, living in D.C., there's cuisine from all over the world. But I would say at least every other week we'd go for Ethiopian. Even my 2.5-year-old would be like, Ethiopian. It's something about it. It's so delicious and flavorful. but yet it's not for everybody. My mom and my mother-in-law, who are both very adventurous, who've traveled around the world, who are open-minded, tried it and were like, nope, and the issue was that injera. They felt like that texture, that a cold, spongy bread didn't sit well with them. And we're like, oh my God, this is amazing, but you're missing out. But so it's no shame if you don't like it. I just ask you to try it, So